Hyderabad Shamirpet లో ఉన్నటువంటి ప్రీమియర్ బి స్కూల్ ఇన్స్టిట్యూట్ ఆఫ్ పబ్లిక్ ఎంటర్ప్రైజెస్ తన ప్రతిష్టాత్మకమైన కాన్వకేషన్ ను 2023 ని శామీర్పేట్ లోని ఎస్ఎన్ఆర్ పుష్ప కన్వెన్షన్ హాల్ లో ఎంతో వైభవంగా ఉత్సాహంగా నిర్వహించారు. ఈ కార్యక్రమానికి ముఖ్య అతిథులుగా డాక్టర్ జయతి ఘోష్ మెసేజ్ సెట్స్ విశ్వవిద్యాలయం అంబర్స్ మరియు మాజీ ప్రొఫెసర్ సెంటర్ ఫర్ ఎకనామిక్ స్టడీస్ మరియు ప్లానింగ్ స్కూల్ ఆఫ్ సోషల్ సైన్సెస్ జేఎన్యూ హాజరయ్యారు. 948 మంది విద్యార్థులు ఈ కాన్వకేషన్ లో పాల్గొని వ్యక్తిగతంగా డిగ్రీలు తీసుకున్నారు. ఈ సందర్భంగా IPE డైరెక్టర్ ప్రొఫెసర్ ఎస్ శ్రీనివాసమూర్తి అతిథులను స్వాగతిస్తూ సంస్థ యొక్క చరిత్ర మరియు వైభవాన్ని, మేనేజ్మెంట్ విద్య, శిక్షణ, పరిశోధన మరియు కన్సల్టెన్సీలో సాధించిన ప్రగతిని, IAS అధికారుల కోసం నిర్వహించే లెర్నింగ్ అండ్ డెవలప్మెంట్ కార్యక్రమాలలో IPE పాత్రను మరియు కేంద్ర రాష్ట్ర స్థాయి పబ్లిక్ ఎంటర్ప్రైజెస్ తో ఏర్పడిన బలమైన సంబంధాలను తెలియజేశారు. ఈ కాన్వకేషన్ లో పేరొందిన విద్యా సంస్థల అధిపతులు, ప్రభుత్వ భారీ పరిశ్రమలకు సంబంధించిన ప్రముఖులు, IPE బోర్డ్ ఆఫ్ గవర్నర్లు, అధ్యాపక బృందం సిబ్బంది, పూర్వ విద్యార్థులు, విద్యార్థుల తల్లిదండ్రులు పాల్గొన్నారు.
నమస్తే, గుడ్ ఈవినింగ్ everyone. It is my privilege to welcome the distinguished chief guest of the day, Professor Jayati Ghosh, Professor of Economics, Political Economy Research Institute, University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and former professor, Center for Economic Studies and Planning, School of Social Sciences, JNU. Sri K. Madharava Garu, our esteemed President, IPE, Srimati Mahaparali Garu, our esteemed board member, distinguished invitees, guests, graduating students, parents, members from electronic and print media, faculty, staff, and students, and other invitees. It gives me immense pleasure to extend my warm greetings to this august gathering on this occasion. Set up in 1964 by the then Cabinet Secretary Sri S.S. Khera, ICS, Dr. D.S. Reddy, the then Vice Chancellor of Usmania University, and Professor V.V. Ramanatham, Founder Director, IPE has gained prominence as a think tank generating inputs on policy making concerning public policy issues with Sri K. Madharava Garu as President, Board of Governors, IPE. It was in 1970 that a group of UN experts remarked IPE was the only institute in the world devoted to the study on public enterprises. IPE's contribution was noticed at the national level quite early. In mid-1980s, the research on public sector enterprises done by IPE was accepted by the Economic Advisory Council of the Prime Minister, Planning Commission, and the Finance Commission. The knowledge and expertise of the institute is being tapped by the Government of India and the state governments in their annual exercises of enhancing the performance of public sector enterprises for more than 5 decades. The institute came to be recognized as a center of excellence for research on public enterprises and social sciences by the Indian Council of Social Science Research, ICSR, Ministry of Education, Government of India. Through the MOU exercise, IPE reached out a majority of central public sector enterprises and got associated with the Department of Public Enterprises, Government of India in monitoring the performance of central public sector enterprises. IPE has been disseminating scholarly contributions to public enterprises through 7 of its research journals. It has conducted 1,500 programs, including 280 seminars, conferences, attended by more than 50,000 executives from public and private sectors, and organized learning and development programs for 1,600 IAS officers of various seniorities. The entry of IPE in the long-term education was a path-breaking step which further diversified the activity portfolio of the institute. The first long-term education program, that is MBA Public Enterprise, was started in 1981 with the affiliation of the Usmania University. Based on this experience, IPE launched other management programs. In 1985, the flagship postgraduate diploma in management. In 2007, PGDM Retail Marketing. In 2008, PGDM Banking, Insurance and Finance Services. In 2009, International Business, and 2012, PGDM HRM courses were started. All these programs are approved by AICTE and have a total intake of 540 now. All these programs are SACS accredited and considered equivalent to MBA by the Association of Indian University. IPE is NRF ranked and is also ranked well among the leading B schools in India in various ranking surveys. The institute offers the state-of-art curriculum in all its PGDM programs which is finalized in consultation with all stakeholders. The institute offers dual specialization to all its PGP students. The specializations offered by the institute include finance, marketing, HR, operations, systems, business analytics, economics, and entrepreneurship. In every specialization, the students are provided with wide choice of subjects to choose from. The institute has strong linkages with the industry and has been offering excellent placement and summer internship opportunity to the students. The students have a rich campus life at its beautiful 22-acre campus at Shamirpet, and students have very good sports facilities thanks to our President and Board of Governors. Please give a big round of applause. The students have excellent facilities. They have a very good academic block, and we have indoor stadium, FIFA standard football court, cricket ground, basketball ground, whatnot, tennis court, everything. Please visit. We'll be happy to receive you. IPE continues its research on contemporary issues confronted by public sector enterprises like corporate governance, corporate social responsibility, risk management, new financial management tools and techniques, management of innovation and technology, transparency and accountability issues. IPE has been on several committees and commissions of the Government of India, DPE, Planning Commission, Ministry of Steel, Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, etc., and international organizations such as ADB, World Bank, OECD. Today is a historic day as the students of classes of 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022 are graduated. We congratulate all the graduating students on this happy occasion. We once again welcome and express our gratitude to the Chief Guest, Professor Jayati Ghosh, for accepting to deliver the convocation address and bless the graduating students in spite of her very busy schedule. We extend our warm greetings, regards to our Honorable President Sri K. Madhav Garu, Honorable Board Member Madam Mahabar Ali Garu, all dignitaries, press and media, parents, faculty, staff and graduate students. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
May I now invite Shri K. Madhav Rao, President, Board of Governors, IPE, to the podium for presidential address.
I invite to this convocation our chief guest, Professor Jayati Ghosh, Mrs. Mahabar Ali, member of the Board of Governors, faculty, staff, and students of the Institute, invitees, press and the media. My hearty congratulations to the graduating students. IP has a rich history. Okay. IP has a rich history spanning around 6 decades. It originated in the background of our first industrial policy put in place in 1956. This policy gave great importance to public sector enterprise. IP's mandate was to train managers who were working in the public enterprises and the IAS officers and other senior officers who were holding top positions in the public enterprise. IPE was also interested to take up research to provide inputs for evolving policy options for the public enterprises. Management was inbuilt in the IPE mandate from the very beginning in that capacity. IPE has touch-based the public sector enterprises in the country, both in the central and state domains. It so far trained more than 45,000 managers at various levels. Today, IPE deals both with the public sector as well as private enterprises in view of a series of policy shift by the Government of India in the relative roles of these two sectors. IPE's journey in management education started in the year 1978 when it introduced one-year postgraduate diploma in public enterprise management. This was upgraded in 1981 to a 3-year part-time program, that is MBA Public Enterprise, with affiliation to the Osmania University. During the same period, IPE was affiliated to the Osmania University for PhD programs. This institute is now affiliated to 20 universities all over the country for its PhD programs and has so far produced around 100 PhDs. IPE is one of the first institutions in India to start a one-year postgraduate diploma in computer science. In 1985, IPE started one-year part-time program on development banking at the initiative of the IDBI. Building on this diverse experience, IPE launched its 2-year full-time PGDM in business management in 1995. Over the years, the institute has built a diverse portfolio of long-term programs as per the requirements of the industry. It introduced PGDM, PGDM HRM, and Executive PGDM. All these are recognized by the AICTE. All these are considered equivalent to MBA by the Association of Indian Universities. Dear students and honored guests, as I address you today on this occasion of graduation day, I acknowledge the contribution of the past presidents and members of the Board of Governors in getting the institution to this level. The wonderful infrastructure of international class gives us a sense of accomplishment. Board member, Ms. Mohandas Pai of Infosys and Manipal Global, and our wonderful lady member, Mrs. Mahapar Ali, took personal interest in this scheme. Thank you, Ms. Pai. Thank you, Mrs. Ali. Management schools have to compete among themselves to obtain competitive rankings. IPE is among one of the top ranked management institutions in India. We have students and faculty from all over the country. You must have heard about the concept of robber barons. It's a derogatory term originally applied to certain 19th century American businessmen. They purportedly used exploitative practices like resorting to cruel measures to weaken or even kill the rival firms, use unlawful measures to capture the government machinery and the regulators, to create monopolies paying subsistence level wages, raising prices for their product to reap more and more profits, and sell the shares at inflated prices. Standard Oil, Central Pacific Railroad, Morgan Stanley, Andrew Carnegie are some of these top barons of 19th century. Sadly, in today's India, we are not doing too badly in having our own robber barons. That's why I said sadly we are having our own crop of robber barons. IPE and you, the alumni, expect to join big companies and get decent pay packet. Ethical values and practices are as important as higher pay packets and rising up in the ladder. Competition and winning the race is good, but there should be rules in the arena. After we got independence in 1947, we adopted our own constitution in which we declared that we are a socialist country and incorporated Articles 38 and 39, which categorically mandate that the inequalities existing at the time of independence should be reduced. No further concentration of wealth should be permitted, and that the resources and opportunities of the country should be equitably made available to all the people of India. But I have this question to ask: did this all happen as contemplated in the Constitution? After studying the data published by the Government of India and the national surveys for 92 years between 1922 to 2014, two French economists, Thomas Piketty and Lucas Chanel, published in 2014 a report with a title which is hair-raising in its expression. The heading is "From British Raj to Billionaire Raj." It is estimated that the British stole from us, from our country, during their 200 and odd years rule, 45 trillion US dollars, or 358 crores of Indian rupees. The Piketty and Lucas report says India's income inequality in 2017 is a lot worse than it was during the British Raj. Good thing that these two professors are not British, but they are French. Otherwise, motives could have easily been attributed to the report. There can be a greater disservice to the freedom fighters and to the freedom movement itself, and finally, the great constitution that we have, than earning the title "From British Raj to Billionaire Raj." In my view, we were a socialist country till the terrible trinity, Mr. Manmohan Singh, Chidambaram, Montek Singh Ahluwalia, converted our socialist country into a capitalist country from 1991. Things are becoming worse since then. Latest Oxfam report on income inequality in India clearly proves this disastrous change from 1991. The number of Indian billionaires grew from 102 in 2021 to 142 in 2001. That is, in 1 year, the number of billionaires increased by 42, while the share of the bottom of the 50% of the population shrank from to a mere 6%. Ethical values and practices are as important in public sector as in private sector. Without such values, they tend to get greedy and corrupt. When that happens, the captains of the industry become the pirates. Our country cannot afford such large-scale and endemic corrupt practices. I appeal to all of you graduating students from IPE to pay as much attention to ethical values as your emoluments and make IPE proud. I now request our eminent Chief Guest, Prof. Jayati Ghosh, to award the medals and diplomas.
Thank you very much, sir. Your thought-provoking address set a perfect platform for our convocation ceremonials.
May I request Professor M.L.N. Rao, Controller of Examinations, IPE, to present the students to the convocation for the confirmation of postgraduate diplomas, and Shri K. Madhav Rao, President, Board of Governors, IPE, to announce postgraduate diplomas to the students of classes 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. Students of the announced classes are requested to raise up for taking the oath. May I call upon Professor M.L.N. Rao.
Please rise from your seats. Only students. Sir, I present you 509 students of class of 2019 and 538 students of class of 2020, 541 students class of 2021 and 531 students class of 2022 of the institute whose names are set out in the list and who have been examined.
Shri K. Madhav Rao Garu, Shri Srinivas Murthy Garu, respected colleagues on the dais, and all of you young students and your families. It's such a pleasure to be here to see so many young people full of enthusiasm and excitement at getting into your careers. I think some of you already are in your careers. You're well into it already, but it's absolutely delightful to see so many young people. It really gives you hope for the future of you. And I know it's a day of great joy. So I hate to be somebody bringing back concerns that we have to think about all the time, the rest of the time. But I'm going to do that anyway, because I think it's so important, especially for young managers who are going to be really running the country in different ways. All of you are going to be absolutely critical in the country's development and in our society, in our politics. So I think it's very important for all of us to remember the nature of our country and what we need to do to make things better. So I'm going to really talk about something that we would all like to forget, which is the pandemic. I think it's very clear that we've all had a terrible period. Many of us have experienced great suffering. We've lost people in our family, our friends. We've seen a lot of tragedy around us, and naturally everybody wants to put it behind us. But I think that would be a mistake. I think we shouldn't really try and forget what has happened, because then the chances of us repeating those same mistakes is very great. So bear with me. I know especially the young people hate to think about the past, even the very recent past. But still, bear with me because I think it's going to in fact be important even for your future. So I do have a written text, but I'm not going to read it out. And I'm also not going to spend as much time on it because I know many of you are still anxious to get your diplomas and degrees. And I know many of you, having got your diplomas and degrees, now want to just go out into the world and do other things. But I do want to make all of you think a little bit about what it means now to be in this position of privilege that we have today. I have to tell you, all of you are really lucky. I was very happy to be able to visit your campus and to see your wonderful women's hostel. I realized how lucky you all are. I can tell you my students in JNU would be so jealous of your facilities. And I'm sure you've all had an excellent education. But all of us are also very privileged in other ways, right? We are going to have lives that are very, very different from most of our country people. And we have to recognize that. And we have to recognize that we have a responsibility to everyone else. Because unfortunately, so much of our society, politics, economy is still very predicated on inequality. And not just inequality in terms of distribution, who gets what, how many assets or income different people have, but also relational inequality, power imbalances. And let's face it, you're going to be on the top end of the power imbalance. So it's important to recognize what that means, and it's also important to recognize that until we reduce those power imbalances and that inequality, we're never really going to make it as a country that we should all be absolutely proud of. And I'm telling you as somebody who I think really does love this country, that I would like to be not as great as we would like to be. And in particular, therefore, I want to talk about what the pandemic showed about us as a society, as a polity, and as an economy. Because in fact, what we've experienced has actually been a catastrophe for about at least 60% of our population. It's not just the illness, it's not just the disease, it's not just the people we have lost. The WHO estimates that more than 4 million people died in that period. The excess deaths of the pandemic are more than 4 million compared to our estimate of about 600,000. So we really have to think about not just what the pandemic did, but why it was so devastating. And in fact, it was devastating beyond the deaths. It was devastating beyond the disease. What has happened to the economy, to livelihoods, to employment is absolutely a catastrophe. But it was also a created catastrophe. It's because we handled it in a particular way and the government handled it in a particular way. We chose to have a very abrupt, well, let's say the government chose to have a very abrupt national lockdown at a time when there were only 500 cases in the country. We imposed it like a military curfew. We denied informal workers their livelihood in a country where we do not give social protection, where 95% of workers do not have any social protection, except for whatever they can get from the ration shop. We basically said, you cannot go and earn your living. You have to fend for yourselves in whichever way you can. When desperate migrant workers who were unable to feed themselves tried to go home, we put barriers in their way. We behaved in the most atrocious way possible, setting up different kinds of constraints on mobility, forcing them to travel at night to avoid detection, to walk hundreds of kilometers. We know of hundreds of people who perished on the way. And all of this was done without adequate democratic process. We had a central government that imposed a national lockdown without consulting state governments. We had a National Disaster Management Act that made decisions, but then state governments had to deal with it. And then those state governments didn't really have sufficient resources to handle all the consequences. So we had very different responses in different parts of the country. And we also had much greater degrees of suffering than we need have had, simply because we did it in this rather cruel way. I think we also have to remember what we decided was going to be healthy. We decided that we have to do what is called social distancing. It's actually physical distancing, right? Keeping apart, 6 feet apart from other people. But that physical distancing is not possible for at least half of our population. They live in very congested ways. In urban India, at least 60% lives in slums where you cannot choose to live 6 feet away or be 6 feet away from other people. Similarly, in rural India, at least a quarter of the population, it's very difficult to do that kind of physical distancing. We said, wash your hands frequently and sing happy birthday while you're doing it, right? 20 seconds or something. Wash your hands with soap and water in buckets to come back, and cannot waste that water on frequent washing of hands. We assumed a middle-class existence from the West, which most of our people do not have. And then we imposed those rules on those for whom already life was extremely difficult, on the grounds of health. It also brought out some of the worst elements in whether we like it or not. And this came out in so many different ways. The terrible ways in which care workers were treated. Even when we were out there banging pots and saying we will celebrate care workers, we were actually treating them very badly. We were not giving even the Ashas, Anganwadi workers, frontline health workers, ANMs, we were not giving them even the money that they needed, them even the basic health insurance that they required. Domestic workers, many of them lost their livelihood in a period when it was not their fault that they could not come and work. And we, the urban upper middle classes, were party to that. We were party to not ensuring that everybody was adequately protected. I can tell you that it's to its poor during the pandemic, as we have been. And that's something we have to think about, that we tolerated a degree of inequality. Recovery from the pandemic is not as buoyant and robust as we like to think. And lower. The median wage is lower than it was before the pandemic in money terms. And we know that prices have gone up hugely, especially in about 40% of the workers who have been surveyed by our periodic labor force survey. It's lower than it was in 2016. And yet we don't seem to notice it because we are, in a sense, celebrating the recovery of the middle class. And you know, it's a big middle class. Even 10% of our population is 130 million people. It's a lot of people. It can be quite a big country. Because it doesn't work that way. The more we actually do not ensure that most of our people have basic needs, have the ability to live the whole, for now it's 13 years. 2010, we reached a rate of investment of 41%. Since then, it has been coming down continuously. Ticket investors, of course, it turns out should not have made those large investments. But in general, the overall rate of investment is coming down. Why? Because mass consumption is down. Because the people I've been telling you about, the bulk of the workers are getting lower wages, many of things. So when the mass consumption market, that first hits informal employment, the 95% of the workers, but eventually it also hits the 5% of the workers, all of us. So we cannot pretend that we are immune from what is going on in the rest of the economy. So it really means that we have respects for particular people. We should not see the advancement of a small minority as a bulk of the people in the country have access to all citizens' rights, the things we take for granted. A proper job, basic conditions of living, ability to feed your children and not worry about where the next meal will come from, ability to educate children. All of those things have to happen, they have to happen. And that public spending in turn means that we have to be able to tax the rich. We can't simply say, well, you know, there are these people who are extremely wealthy and their wealth has doubled or tripled or quadrupled in the last 4 years, and that's all we can do. We can just look. Now, if all of this can come security, basic employment security, basic food security. Then we can have an economy that we are proud of. I know that all of you are rightfully proud of your achievements today because you have come through a course, you have just graduated, you are going to go out in the world and get interesting, excellent jobs. But you also have to remember that we have to operate in an economy in which we must make sure that development is for everyone, for every citizen. Life, not just in terms of the specific job you're going to do, not just in terms of whichever company you're going to work for and what you will deliver for them, every citizen's conditions and their rights. Because honestly, all of you young people are our hope, but if you are our hope, but it's not just on you, but it's also that you will face the consequences of the terrible inequalities that our generation has created and left for you. So it's in your own interest to think about inequalities. It's in your own interest to think about all the different kinds of inequality, not just of income and class, but of gender. I can't tell you how happy I am that there's so many women students here. It's fantastic. It's great to see so many women students. And doing so well as well, yes? Think about the gender inequality. Think about the caste inequality. I didn't ask, obviously, who is which caste, but honestly, it is a terrible, pervasive, disastrous thing, a cancer in our society that we really have to get rid of. So let's be conscious of those things and think about how to reduce them, eliminate them, because then, in fact, today it's a day when I see all of you, I do feel proud of my country, but I really wish I could feel prouder, and I hope all of you will make sure that I do. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.